Right, guys, we're back at Rayong Beach today. It's a little bit overcast, to be honest. We are in rainy season and the weather has been pretty temperamental all day, pretty up and down. It's been some beautiful sunshine about an hour ago, thunderstorms this morning, and now it seems to have leveled out at a middle ground. And I try to keep things positive on this channel. I don't really. I'm always talking about negative shit. But today I'm going to talk about something negative, but something realistically negative. Something that's, I believe, acceptably negative. And that's the hardest things about living here in Thailand. 3 of them I've come up with. I think 2 of them are pretty universal, but I've got a couple of points to make. And then the last one is something that's been bothering me more and more in the last few months. Let's get straight into it. I'm not going to do any fancy editing or anything on this video. Number 1 is being away from your family. Now, I think that's pretty universal, right? I think if you've got a decent relationship with your family, you move abroad, then you're going to obviously miss them. The difference, I think, lies in when you move abroad. People come to Thailand at all different ages. I moved abroad when I was 24. I'm 37 now. 37? I thought you were 57. Yeah, all right. I know. I just like to try and diffuse those comments before people get all excited and giddy. I've been abroad for 13 years. Miss my family a lot. And I think the time you realize it the most is, number 1, special events. Christmas, birthdays. Unfortunately, more recently, some deaths in the family as well, where you're kind of faced with a difficult decision. Do you go back? Do you stay where you are? Sometimes it's too late and, you know, you're never going to see that person again. That's just part of life. You know, if I was still back home, as I'm sure is the same with everyone, death is never a happy moment. But the other part of it is watching your parents grow old periodically. Now, luckily, in the last few years, I've been able to see my parents once every, let's say, 18 months on average. They're not together, so I see them separately. Obviously, I see them both when I go back to the UK, and then I see them individually when they come to this side of the world. I'm trying to sound disrespectful towards my parents, who I love more than anything in the world when I say this, but they always look a little bit older every time. And, you know, obviously, maybe if you're there with your parents day to day, week to week, you don't notice these types of things. I wish I could just go and sit with them at the weekend, have some food, watch some TV, etc. You know, do nothing, but it's not possible. So when I do see them a year and a half, 2 years later, it can be tough sometimes to see that they're getting old and I'm missing out on them growing old. They're missing out on, I don't think they're missing out on anything significant in my life, but seeing my daughter grow up. But that's the situation we find ourselves in. Missing your family, obviously difficult for everyone. I think that's a pretty standard one. And number 2, kind of piggybacking off that, is missing your friends. But let me frame this for you. I put a little fake video on TikTok the other day. I thought it was hilarious where I was putting an ad out, let's say, for prospective friends here in Thailand, saying what type of person I was, what type of friends I am looking for. I'm telling people to leave the resume if they're interested. I think most people got that it was tongue-in-cheek, but some of the more surprising, let's say, comments that I got were that many people emphasized with the feeling of coming out here and feeling a little bit isolated, not being able to make proper friends. I've seen some YouTubers, some TikTokers talk about the difficulty of making Thai male friends. And the way I view that is, I've moved to 3 different countries now, and I have to imagine it from my perspective, growing up and living in the UK. Of course, there's always opportunities to make new friends, but I don't think many established friendship groups, particularly grown men, are looking for a token foreigner to take in who can barely speak their language, doesn't really understand their culture, doesn't understand their history, as in their friendship group history, etc. So whilst you can make the occasional friend and you can have some great conversations, that one doesn't really bother me too much. It's the lack of friends who you have those shared perspectives with. Of course, you're not going to have the history that you have with your friends back home with anyone. You have to build that history over time, that history, those memories, those stories, those jokes that no one else understands. Even the shared culture, you know, the love for football, the passion for football, which obviously exists in many different countries, particularly over in Europe. I think British people have a different perspective on football fandom than, let's say, Spanish people, Italian people, certainly American people. And it goes for many different things. I think sense of humor is a very specific thing. It's a very personal thing, but I think it can also be very influenced by the culture that you come from. You know, British humor is debatable at times. I love it, particularly before everything became woke. I think you could have all sorts of jokes in Britain and it was harmless, as David Brent would say, harmless. But it's very rare to meet someone that you click with over things like that, particularly in this modern society where everyone kind of has their guard up a little bit and people are maybe afraid to show their true selves. It sounds negative, that, but what I'm saying is people are always a bit guarded when they meet people for the first time, don't want to offend anyone. So, you know, it's difficult to make really good friends. So, of course, it makes you think of the friends you've left behind. And number 3 actually kind of piggybacks off that. And it's what I'm going to call cultural catch-up. I've just made up that expression, but let me explain what it is. I've lived abroad for 13 years now, and every year that goes by, particularly the last 4 or 5 years or so, I feel like you lose a little bit of who you are year by year. The longer you're out here, it's kind of suffocating. And being in a relationship with someone from a different culture is a game of compromise. You know, it's a beautiful thing. Don't get me wrong. There's not a slant on my relationship or anyone who's in a mixed cultural relationship, but there are things that you have to consider compared to if you were just in a standard British relationship, American relationship, etc. You kind of find that you lose yourself a little bit being out here. I really feel that. I feel like there might be people who, you know, love to come on here and educate you, and they're like, oh, that's just you, lad. That's just you. I found myself out here. And it's like, that's cool. If you came out here and found yourself, that's cool. I love being out here. It's not that I don't want to be out here. It's not that I regret being out here. I just understand that had I stayed in the UK when I was 24, I would probably be a very different person to who I am now. In some good ways, in some bad ways. Certainly in terms of family, I've hit the jackpot out here. My daughter, my wife, etc. But the point is, life would have been a lot more seamless had I stayed in the UK long term. Whereas there's a hell of a lot of things you have to think about, consider when you're living abroad for such a long time, not just the technical things like visas and money and work, etc. The cultural things. I feel like I head into every situation now with, you know, cultural considerations at the forefront of my mind. And that's 100% okay, because this isn't my country. I'm a guest here. I'm very lucky to be living here, to be living such a beautiful life. But it does take its toll on you, certainly. And there are times where you think to yourself, life would be easier back home. There's 3 things that I've thought of. Let me know if you feel that or if you feel something similar to it. And please feel free to sound off and explain your interpretation of what that is, because I'll be honest, I'm not entirely sure. I know there's an idea in there, but I don't know if I've articulated it very well in this video. So that's it for this one, guys. Hope you've enjoyed this latest ramble. As always, I'm going to go and enjoy this non-sunset. It would be a sunset if there was some sun, but there's no sun, so I'm going to call it a non-set. So listen, have a great weekend. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.